Lyra had always been taught that humans were weak. As a member of the highly advanced Xerithian race, she was trained to see the inhabitants of Earth as primitive, insignificant, and far beneath her species. The Xerithians had spent centuries studying Earth from the distant reaches of the galaxy, gathering data, observing, and concluding that humans had no real potential. They were small, fragile, and outmatched by the vastness of the universe. But Lyra, like many others of her kind, had always wondered if there was more to this planet than the data suggested. Her mission was simple: observe and report. Lyra's task was to monitor the human race, gathering information to better understand them. At first, she believed it would be an easy assignment, one that wouldn't require much thought or effort. But when she landed on Earth, things didn't go as she expected. She arrived in a bustling city, the noise of millions of people and vehicles humming through the streets. The humans, although small in stature, seemed to possess a certain energy that Lyra couldn't quite place. There was an undeniable drive to them, a determination that wasn't apparent in any other species she had encountered. She found herself intrigued, even if she tried to push it away. There was a human among them, someone she had been ordered to observe directly. His name was Ethan, a scientist working in a research facility nearby. He was tall by human standards, with dark hair and sharp eyes that never seemed to rest. Lyra had been told that he was the kind of person humans regarded as exceptional, but to her, he was just another human, another subject to analyze. She was sent to gather information on his work, which focused on energy systems, a field that Lyra knew was primitive compared to the advanced technology of the Xerithians. The first time she met Ethan, it was in the middle of a hectic lab environment. He was bent over a table, working with several machines and tools scattered around. Lyra stood in the doorway, watching him for a moment before entering. His back was to her, and he didn't notice her at first. His hands moved quickly, adjusting settings on an energy converter, his focus absolute. Lyra's mind raced as she observed him. His concentration was unlike anything she had seen before. The humans, she had been taught, were easily distracted and quick to give up on things that didn't come easily. But this human was different. His passion for his work was clear, and his persistence, in the face of so many setbacks, was impressive. Finally, Ethan turned and saw her. His eyes locked with hers, and for a brief moment, Lyra felt something stir within her, a strange fluttering sensation in her chest that she didn't understand. She quickly suppressed it, reminding herself of her duty. Humans were nothing more than subjects, after all. "Can I help you?" Ethan asked, his voice calm but curious. He seemed unafraid of her, which struck Lyra as odd. Most humans, upon meeting someone as different as her, would react with fear or at least caution. But Ethan was composed, his expression friendly and open. This human, like many others, was unlike what she had been told to expect. "I was sent here to observe your research," Lyra replied, her voice steady, even though a strange warmth was creeping into her words. "I have some questions about your energy projects." Ethan smiled, a small, knowing smile that made Lyra feel like he was seeing right through her. "I'd be happy to explain. Please, take a seat." As she sat down at the table opposite him, Lyra couldn't help but notice the way his eyes sparkled when he spoke about his work. It wasn't just about the science. It was about the challenge, the drive to make something impossible possible. Lyra had read about this human trait, but seeing it firsthand was an entirely different experience. There was a fire in Ethan that made him stand out among the others. For the next hour, they spoke about energy, about the future of human technology, and about Ethan's dreams for a better world. Lyra, who had been taught to see humans as unworthy of any serious consideration, found herself genuinely interested in his words. The more he spoke, the more she realized that humans were not the simple, primitive beings she had been led to believe. Their potential was far greater than anyone had given them credit for. As their conversation ended, Lyra couldn't shake the strange feeling that had settled in her chest. She had come to Earth with a clear mission: to observe and report. But now, she wasn't so sure what to think. Ethan wasn't just a subject to study. He was a person with dreams, hopes, and a fire inside him that Lyra couldn't quite understand. She had never expected to feel such an intense connection to a human. But the longer she stayed near him, the stronger that connection grew. Lyra left the lab that day with more questions than answers. She had come to Earth expecting to confirm her species' superiority. But instead, she found herself wondering if humans might just be the ones to change the galaxy. And it was all because of a single human whose passion, drive, and energy had touched something deep inside her, a feeling she couldn't ignore. The more she thought about Ethan, the more Lyra realized that the mission she had been given was no longer so simple. Her beliefs about humanity were beginning to unravel, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure what would come next. Lyra couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. Ever since their first meeting, something about him had stuck with her. She told herself it was just curiosity, just a simple human fascination. After all, humans were known to be unpredictable, and Ethan's personality was certainly no exception. But no matter how much she tried to distance herself, the thoughts of him kept creeping into her mind. Over the next few weeks, Lyra continued her observations, always returning to the lab where Ethan worked. She had convinced herself it was just a professional interest. Her mission was to learn about human technology and progress. But with each visit, it became harder to ignore the connection she felt. Ethan's energy, his drive, and the way he looked at her made her feel something she had never experienced before. She found herself wanting to be near him, wanting to understand more about his world, his hopes, and dreams. One afternoon, Lyra entered the lab again, this time with a new set of questions about Ethan's research. He greeted her as usual, that same warm smile on his face, and she couldn't help but notice how his eyes sparkled when he spoke about his work. There was something magnetic about him, something that drew her in every time they spoke. "Lyra, it's good to see you," Ethan said, motioning for her to sit. "I was just working on a new project. I think you'll find it interesting." Lyra sat down, trying to focus on the topic at hand. Ethan began explaining the details of a new energy source he was developing. His voice was confident, filled with the passion of someone who truly believed in what he was doing. Lyra had to admit, his enthusiasm was contagious. She found herself listening more closely than ever before, fascinated not only by the science but by the human behind it. As they talked, Lyra felt something shift within her. She had always seen her species as superior, stronger, smarter, more advanced. But in that moment, as Ethan spoke about his dreams of creating a sustainable energy system that could change the world, Lyra wondered if her people had been wrong about humans all along. Maybe humans weren't weak after all. Maybe they had something her species couldn't even begin to understand. Ethan paused for a moment, noticing the distant look in Lyra's eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. "You seem a little lost in thought." Lyra blinked, snapping out of her trance. "I'm fine," she said quickly. "Just thinking about your project. It's impressive." Ethan smiled, but there was a trace of concern in his eyes. "You know, I've been working on this for years, but there's still so much we don't know. I think that's what makes science so exciting. There's always something new to discover." Lyra nodded, feeling a strange warmth in her chest. She had heard similar words from other intelligent species, but there was something different in Ethan's voice. It was as if he wasn't just talking about science. He was talking about life itself, about the potential for change, for growth. As their conversation continued, Lyra found herself opening up more than she ever had before. She spoke of her own species, of their endless pursuit of knowledge and power. She spoke of their strict rules, their rigid expectations, and how they viewed themselves as the leaders of the galaxy. But for the first time, she found herself questioning all of it. Could the Zerithians be wrong? Could they have overlooked something important about humanity? "I've been thinking," Lyra said slowly, her voice uncertain, "about your people, and about mine. I was always told that humans were weak, that your species would never stand a chance against others. But now, I'm not so sure. Ethan looked at her with curiosity, as if waiting for her to continue. She hesitated, unsure of what she was really feeling. Could she trust him with these thoughts? Could she trust a human with the doubts that had begun to grow inside her? I've been taught that our species is the most advanced, Lyra continued, her voice quieter now. That no one can match our intellect, our strength. But when I look at you, and when I see the things you're trying to accomplish, I wonder, maybe you're right. Maybe humanity has something we don't. Ethan's expression softened, and for a moment, he said nothing. Then he leaned forward, his eyes intense and thoughtful. I don't know about all that, he said. But what I do know is that humans are capable of amazing things. We have a drive to survive, to push forward no matter the odds. We may not have the technology or the power some other species have, but we got something else, something you can't measure with science or technology. Lyra felt her heart race at his words. She had always prided herself on her logical thinking, her ability to analyze and understand everything around her. But Ethan was speaking about something that couldn't be explained by logic. He was speaking about the human spirit, something raw and untouchable. As the day wore on, Lyra realized that she had spent more time with Ethan than she had intended. The hours seemed to slip by unnoticed, and when she finally stood to leave, she found herself reluctant to go. "Thank you for the conversation," she said, her voice a little softer than usual. Ethan smiled again. "Anytime, Lyra. You know where to find me." As she stepped out of the lab, Lyra's mind was racing. She had come to Earth with one goal in mind, to observe and report. But now she was questioning everything she had believed about humans and about herself. There was something undeniable about Ethan, something that called to her in a way she couldn't explain. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt uncertain about her mission. She had come to study a weak species, but now she wasn't so sure who the real weak ones were. Over the next few weeks, Lyra's visits to the lab became more frequent. What had started as an assignment, merely observing Ethan and his work, had evolved into something much more complex. Every time she saw him, she felt a strange pull, a connection she couldn't explain. She'd come to Earth to study humans, but now she was finding herself more and more drawn to them, especially Ethan. Her mind struggled to make sense of the emotions she was beginning to feel. As a Zerithian, she had been taught that emotions were a distraction, a weakness that could cloud judgment. She had always prided herself on her logical mind, her ability to stay objective. But no matter how hard she tried to push it aside, she couldn't ignore the warmth that spread through her when she was near Ethan. The more she learned about humans, the more her view of them shifted. Ethan wasn't just some average human. He had a passion for his work, an ambition to change the world. And that passion, that drive, was unlike anything Lyra had ever seen before. It was something her own people lacked. The Zerithians had their technology, their intelligence, their strength, but they lacked the raw determination that seemed to fuel humanity. It was as though humans could face any challenge, no matter how difficult, and still keep pushing forward. One evening, after an intense discussion about his research, Ethan looked at Lyra, his expression thoughtful. "You know," he said, "sometimes I wonder if we're doing enough. If we're pushing our technology and our minds far enough. The world's changing fast, and I don't know if we're ready for what's coming." Lyra felt something shift inside her at his words. She had heard similar things from other species before, but never quite like this. Ethan wasn't just concerned about technology. He was concerned about the future, about what humanity could become. And that concern, that sense of responsibility, made her realize just how deeply humans felt connected to the world around them. "I've been thinking a lot too," Lyra said quietly, her voice soft. "About what you said, about humanity's future. It's hard to explain, but I think you might be right. You have something that my people don't." Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Lyra hesitated for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "My species, The Zerithians, we're all about power, logic, and control. But I've seen something different in you, Ethan. It's not just your intelligence. It's the way you never give up. No matter how hard things get, you keep moving forward. It's like you don't know how to quit. Ethan smiled, a small but genuine smile that warmed Lyra's heart in a way she hadn't expected. Well, I guess that's what it means to be human. We don't always have the answers, but we keep trying, you know. Lyra nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She had always believed that the Zerithians were the superior species, that their intellect and strength made them the leaders of the galaxy. But now, as she looked at Ethan, she was starting to question everything she had been taught. Humans, with their flaws and their imperfections, had a strength that the Zerithians could never understand. It wasn't a physical strength, nor was it based on technology or intelligence. It was something deeper. It was the strength of the human spirit, the ability to rise after every fall, to keep fighting even when the odds seemed impossible. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt a sense of doubt about her mission. She had been sent to Earth to observe and report, to gather information on humans for the Zerithians. But now, she wasn't sure she could carry out her mission with the same detachment. She wasn't sure she could continue to see humans as a weak and primitive species. Her growing feelings for Ethan only complicated matters further. Every time she looked at him, she felt a strange mix of admiration, confusion, and, if she was honest with herself, something deeper. She had never allowed herself to feel such things before, not for any individual or species. But Ethan was different. There was something about him, something about the way he saw the world, that made her want to understand him more. The following week, Lyra spent another long day with Ethan in the lab, helping him with his energy research. The two of them worked side by side, and Lyra was struck again by Ethan's ability to think outside the box. He never took anything for granted. Every experiment, every failure, every success was an opportunity for learning. As the day came to an end, Ethan turned to her, his face serious but not without warmth. "Lyra," he said, his voice soft, "I can see that something's been on your mind. You've been distant lately." Lyra paused, unsure of how to respond. She had always been so controlled, so composed. But with Ethan, it was becoming harder to keep up the walls she had built around herself. "I've been thinking about a lot of things," she admitted. "About what you said, about humans, and about my mission." Ethan studied her for a moment, his gaze gentle yet penetrating. "You don't have to talk about it, if you're not ready. But whatever's on your mind, I'm here for you." Lyra felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. She had never felt this way before, especially not with another species. There was something in Ethan's eyes, a trust, a quiet understanding, that made her feel like she wasn't so alone in this vast universe. "I'm not sure I can do it anymore," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can continue pretending that humans are nothing more than a study. I think you're right. I think you have something I've never seen before, and it's making me question everything." Ethan smiled, and for the first time, Lyra felt like she was seeing the real Ethan, the person behind the scientist. He didn't judge her, didn't question her thoughts. He simply accepted her. "I don't have all the answers, Lyra," he said softly. "But I'm glad you're seeing what I see. Humans aren't perfect, but we've got something special. Maybe that's what makes us different." As Lyra looked at Ethan, she realized that her entire view of the universe had changed. Humans, with their flaws and their potential, were not the weak species she had once believed them to be. They were capable of so much more than she had ever imagined, and perhaps they were exactly what the galaxy needed. The days that followed Lyra's confession were filled with a quiet tension. She had opened up to Ethan in a way she never expected, and while she was relieved to finally speak her mind, she couldn't shake the uncertainty that lingered. She had always known herself to be logical and detached, but now, for the first time, her emotions were in turmoil. Every moment spent with Ethan left her questioning everything she had known about herself. and about the mission she had come to Earth to complete. The more time she spent with Ethan, the more she realized that there was something about him that resonated deeply within her. It wasn't just his passion for his work or his drive to change the world. It was the way he treated people, the way he carried himself with kindness and humility. He saw value in everyone, even those who might seem insignificant to others. He believed in the potential of humanity, not just in science and technology, but in the human spirit itself. And that belief was something Lyra had never encountered before. The lab had become the place where Lyra's thoughts and emotions intertwined. It was there that she had first met Ethan, and it was there that her perspective had begun to shift. Each conversation with him, each moment they shared, felt like a thread weaving them closer together. Yet, Lyra knew she had to make a decision. She could no longer remain detached from the situation. Her mission was clear: observe, report, and return to the Zerithian ship with the data she had collected. But now, the mission didn't seem so simple anymore. One evening, after another long day in the lab, Lyra and Ethan stood outside, the cool night air brushing against their skin. The sky above was dotted with stars, a reminder of the vastness of the universe. Yet in that moment, Lyra felt a strange sense of connection, not to the stars, but to the human standing beside her. Ethan turned to her, his expression soft, as if sensing the weight of her thoughts. "You've been quiet lately," he said, his voice gentle. "I know something's been on your mind, Lyra. You don't have to keep it to yourself." Lyra hesitated, the words she had been holding back threatening to spill out. She had kept her feelings hidden for so long, but now, standing beside Ethan, it felt almost impossible to keep pretending. She had never known how to let her guard down, but with him, it felt natural. "I've been thinking," Lyra began, her voice steady but uncertain, "about everything I've seen here. About humanity. About you." She paused, trying to find the right words. "I came to Earth with one purpose in mind: to observe, to collect data. But now, I don't know what to think anymore." Ethan's gaze softened, and he stepped a little closer, his eyes filled with understanding. "You don't have to have all the answers right now, Lyra. I don't expect you to figure everything out overnight. But I'm glad you're starting to question things. It means you're seeing the world in a new way." Lyra let out a quiet sigh. "It's not just the world I'm questioning, Ethan. It's myself. I've always believed that the Zerithians were the most advanced species in the galaxy, that we had the answers. But now, I'm not so sure. I've seen something in you, in humanity, that I didn't expect. Something real." Ethan took a deep breath, as if choosing his words carefully. "I think I know what you're talking about. It's that drive, right? The thing that keeps us going, even when things seem impossible. That's what makes humans different. We don't always have the answers, but we have the will to find them." Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes, that's it. You have something that we don't. My people, my kind, we're driven by logic, by control. But you, Ethan, you're driven by something else. Something I didn't think humans were capable of. You don't just seek knowledge for the sake of knowledge. You seek it because you believe in the future. You believe in making the world better, even if it's just one step at a time." Ethan smiled, his expression warm. "I think that's what makes us human. We may not be the strongest or the smartest, but we have heart. And we care about what happens next. We don't give up, even when it seems like the world is against us." Lyra's heart stirred at his words. She had never truly understood the human spirit, the resilience that Ethan spoke of. But now, standing beside him, she was beginning to see it for herself. Ethan wasn't just a scientist or a researcher. He was a symbol of everything that humanity had to offer: hope, determination, and an unwavering belief in a better future. "I've never met anyone like you, Ethan," Lyra confessed, her voice soft. "I came here to study humans, to prove that you were nothing more than a primitive species. But now, I see that I was wrong. I see that you have something that I can't explain. something that even the Zerithians don't have. Ethan reached out, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're not the first person to think that way," he said with a knowing smile. "But it's okay. We all have our misconceptions. The important thing is that we're learning from each other. And maybe, just maybe, that's the key to making this world, and the universe, better." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with a shared understanding. Lyra could feel the weight of her decision pressing on her, but for the first time in weeks, she felt at peace. Ethan was right. She didn't have all the answers, and maybe she never would. But what she did know was that she couldn't go back to seeing humanity as she once had. Ethan had opened her eyes to something bigger than herself, something worth believing in. As they stood there under the stars, Lyra realized that her mission had changed. She wasn't just observing anymore. She was learning. And maybe, just maybe, the future didn't belong to the Zerithians. Maybe it belonged to humanity. The days that followed were filled with an air of quiet change. Lyra's perspective on humanity, and on Ethan, had shifted. No longer was she a detached observer, studying humans from a distance. Now she was immersed in their world, in their hopes, and in their struggles. Every time she spent with Ethan, she found herself understanding more about him, more about humanity, and more about herself. Her mission, which had once seemed so clear, now felt increasingly complicated. She had come to Earth with one purpose: to observe, to gather information, and to report back to her superiors. But the longer she stayed, the more conflicted she became. She had never expected to feel this way. She had never expected to care. Ethan noticed the change in her too. Though they had shared many conversations about science, technology, and the future of humanity, there was a growing sense between them that went beyond words. Ethan was not blind to the way Lyra's eyes would linger on him when they spoke. He saw the way her expression softened when he talked about his dreams for a better world. And he, too, found himself drawn to her in a way he couldn't explain. There was something about Lyra that intrigued him, something beyond her intelligence and strength. One evening, after another late session in the lab, Lyra found herself standing by the window, gazing out at the dark sky. The stars shimmered above them, a silent reminder of how small she felt in the grand scheme of the universe. Yet, for the first time, she didn't feel alone. She didn't feel like an outsider. There was something about this place, about Earth, that had become home to her in a way she never imagined. Ethan approached her, his footsteps light on the floor. "Lyra?" he asked gently. "You okay?" Lyra turned toward him, her heart racing at the sound of his voice. It was always like this with him. His presence felt like a steady anchor, calming her, making everything else fade into the background. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice quiet, almost hesitant. "I'm not sure I can keep doing this, Ethan. I'm not sure I can keep pretending that I'm just here to observe." Ethan looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "What do you mean?" "I came here with a mission," Lyra said, taking a deep breath. "I was sent by the Zerithians to study humanity, to gather information, to report back. But I've changed. I can't look at you, or anyone here, and see you as just subjects for study anymore. I see the humanity in you. I see what makes you different. And I don't know if I can walk away from that." Ethan's face softened, and he took a small step closer to her. "I think I understand," he said quietly. "You've been doing your job, but it's more than just a job to you now. It's personal." Lyra nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "I don't know what to do, Ethan. My mission is to gather information, to report to the Zerithians. But I don't think I can go back to them the same way I came. I don't want to go back to seeing you all as some experiment. I've come to care about you. I've come to care about humanity." Ethan's eyes locked onto hers, his expression intense yet gentle. "Lyra, I don't know what your people would think if they found out what's going on. But what I do know is this. We've all got our own journey. We're all trying to make sense of this world and our place in it. But no matter where we come from, we're all human in the end. We all have the capacity for change. Lyra felt a wave of relief wash over her at his words. For the first time, she felt like someone truly understood what she was going through. Ethan wasn't just offering her answers. He was offering her something more important: the freedom to be herself, to make her own choices without fear of judgment. "I never expected this," Lyra whispered, almost to herself. "I never expected to feel this way about humans. About you." Ethan took another step closer, his gaze unwavering. "I didn't expect it either. But maybe that's the beauty of life, Lyra. You can never predict where it will take you. And sometimes, the most unexpected things turn out to be the most important." For a long moment, they stood there in silence, the weight of their words hanging in the air. Lyra could feel the shift in her heart, the quiet certainty that she couldn't walk away from this, from Ethan, from humanity. She had seen too much to go back to the way things were before. She had come to Earth to observe, but now she had a new mission: to understand, to learn, and to grow alongside them. "I think I've made up my mind," Lyra said finally, her voice steady. "I'm not going back to the Zerithians. I'm staying here, with you, with humanity." Ethan's face broke into a smile, a wide, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "You don't know how much that means to me, Lyra. I care about you too. I never imagined we'd end up here, but I'm glad we did." Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest as she looked at him. This wasn't what she had expected when she first arrived on Earth, but now it felt like the only thing that mattered. "I don't know what the future holds," Lyra said, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "But I want to find out. With you. Together." Ethan nodded, his expression filled with hope. "I don't know either, but I think we'll figure it out." For the first time since she had arrived on Earth, Lyra felt at peace. Her mission had changed, but it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a new beginning, a new chapter in her life, one that she was ready to embrace. Together, under the vast sky, Lyra and Ethan stood side by side. The universe was full of uncertainty, but in that moment, they knew one thing for sure: they would face whatever came next together. The decision to stay had not been an easy one for Lyra. After all, she had been sent to Earth with a clear mission: to observe and report back to the Zerithians. But as the days passed, she found herself realizing that the mission she had been given was no longer her primary focus. Her relationship with humanity, with Ethan, had become something deeper. The connection she felt wasn't just scientific curiosity, it was something much more profound. And though it left her uncertain about what would come next, she knew she could not ignore it any longer. Ethan, too, was adjusting to this new reality. His feelings for Lyra had only grown stronger since they had opened up to one another. He had always been a man of science, someone who believed in reason and logic. But there was something about Lyra that defied all the rules of logic. She wasn't just intelligent. She was kind, thoughtful, and driven by a curiosity about the world that seemed endless. They had spent so many hours together, talking about everything from the future of Earth to the nature of the universe. Yet with each passing day, their connection grew not just intellectually but emotionally. Ethan no longer saw her as just the alien observer. She was Lyra, someone who had become a part of his world. But with this new closeness came new challenges. Lyra could no longer ignore the reality of her situation. If she stayed on Earth, her presence could have consequences. She had been sent here to gather information, and if the Zerithians found out she had failed to fulfill her mission, they would likely see it as a betrayal. She had broken their trust, and in doing so, she had put herself in a position she never thought possible, one where she had to choose between her own kind and the humanity she had come to care about. One evening, as Lyra sat in the lab, her mind racing with the possibilities of what might come next, Ethan entered the room, his eyes focused, as though he had something important to say. "Lyra," he began, his voice calm but serious. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened, about you being here. I know things haven't been easy for you, and I know you're torn between staying with us and going back to your people. But I want you to know, whatever you decide, I'll be here for you. I care about you." Lyra looked up at him, her heart filled with a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. She had never been one to depend on others, but with Ethan, it felt natural. She had come to realize that she didn't have to face this alone. "I don't know what to do, Ethan," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been sent here to gather information. I was supposed to observe humanity, not become a part of it. But the longer I stay, the more I feel like I belong here. I never expected to feel this way." Ethan smiled softly, stepping closer to her. "I understand. You came here with a purpose, and that purpose has been important to you. But I think you've learned something more, something bigger than the mission you were given. And now you have to decide what to do with that." Lyra sighed, leaning back in her chair, her gaze drifting to the window where the stars twinkled in the night sky. She had always believed in the logic of her mission. She had been taught that emotions and attachments were distractions. But now, those very things had become the guiding force of her decisions. "You're right," she said quietly. "I've learned so much from you and from the people here. But I'm afraid of what my people will think if I fail them. I'm afraid of what it will mean for me." Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to carry that fear alone. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out. And you don't have to go back to the Zerithians if you don't want to. If you want to stay here, with us, with me, I'll support you." His words gave her comfort, yet they also added weight to the decision she had to make. Lyra had spent so much of her life adhering to the rules of her people, believing in the mission she had been given. But now, if humanity were worth more than any report or mission could ever be. "I've been so focused on what I was supposed to do that I never stopped to think about what I actually want," Lyra admitted, her voice filled with self-awareness. "I spent my life thinking that duty came first. But now, I'm starting to understand that maybe it's okay to follow my heart instead." Ethan smiled warmly, his hand still on her shoulder. "It's a big decision, but you don't have to make it alone. We're in this together, no matter what." Lyra's heart swelled with emotion. For the first time in her life, she felt a sense of belonging, a sense of home. She had never known this feeling before, not with the Zerithians, and certainly not with any other species. But with Ethan, and with the human she had come to care for, she realized that she had found something special. "I don't know what the future holds, Ethan," Lyra said softly, her eyes meeting his. "But I know one thing. I want to face it with you. I want to stay to learn and to grow. Not as an observer, but as someone who belongs." Ethan's smile grew even wider, his eyes filled with hope. "Then let's face it together. Whatever comes next, we'll do it side by side." As Lyra looked into his eyes, she felt the weight of her decision lift. She no longer felt the need to choose between duty and her heart. She had found a new path, one where she could be true to herself, to the people she had come to love, and to the future they could build together. And as the night stretched on, Lyra knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them with strength, determination, and the unbreakable bond they had formed. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Lyra felt ready to walk it. The days after Lyra's decision were filled with uncertainty and anticipation. She had chosen to stay on Earth, to live alongside humanity, and to walk a new path, one where her future wasn't determined by the mission she had come with, but by the relationships and experiences she had begun to build. But even as she embraced this new beginning, she knew there were still challenges ahead. Ethan had become a steady presence in her life, a constant reminder of the humanity she had come to care for. The more time they spent together, the more Lyra realized how much she had come to depend on him, not just for support, but for the way he had opened her eyes to a different way of thinking. His belief in humanity's potential had sparked something inside her, something she had never imagined. and in return, she offered him her perspective. A unique outlook shaped by her experiences as an outsider, as someone who had once seen humans from a distance. Despite the bond they shared, Lyra knew that her decision to stay wasn't without consequences. The Zerithians would undoubtedly notice her absence. Her failure to complete the mission could lead to severe repercussions, not just for her, but for Earth itself. She had been sent here to gather information, to observe, and to report back. But the more she saw, the less she wanted to leave. The more she learned about humans, their resilience, their dreams, and their capacity for change, the more she realized that they were worth protecting, worth standing beside. One morning, as Lyra sat in the lab, working on a project with Ethan, the weight of her thoughts became too much to bear. She had to tell him everything about her mission, the truth about why she had come to Earth in the first place. She had kept this secret for so long, but now it was time for him to know the full story. "Ethan," she began, her voice tentative as she looked up from her work, "there's something I need to tell you." Ethan looked up from his screen, sensing the seriousness in her tone. He set aside his tools and focused his full attention on her, his expression open and concerned. "What's on your mind, Lyra?" She hesitated for a moment, gathering her thoughts. This was the hardest part, the moment when she would reveal the truth and risk everything she had built with him. But there was no turning back now. She had to be honest. "I wasn't just sent here to learn about humans," Lyra said quietly. "I was sent to observe you, to gather information, to study your behavior, and to report back to my people. I came here as a part of a mission, to understand humanity, to understand what makes you different, and I was supposed to leave once I had the data I needed." Ethan's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't say anything. He simply waited, allowing her to continue. "But as time passed," Lyra continued, "I started to see things differently. I started to see you, and the people here, as more than just subjects. I started to care about what happens here, about what happens to you. And that's why I'm telling you now, because I can't keep pretending that I'm just an observer anymore. I've become a part of this world. You're being here, facing the future." She realized that her own heart was what truly mattered. The connection she had made with Ethan, world. "And I don't want to leave." Ethan was silent for a moment, processing her words. Lyra held her breath, unsure of how he would react. She had laid everything bare, and now it was up to him to decide if he could accept this truth. Finally, he spoke. "I don't know what to say, Lyra. I can't imagine what it must have been like for you, being here with that kind of burden. But what I do know is this: you didn't have to stay. You could have left at any time, gone back to your people and completed your mission. But you chose to stay, and that means more to me than anything else." Lyra felt a wave of relief wash over her. Ethan wasn't angry or hurt. He understood. He didn't judge her for the choices she had made, for the mission she had abandoned. Instead, he saw the person she had become, the person who had chosen to stay, to fight for a future with humanity. "You're right," Lyra said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I chose to stay, and I'll never regret that decision." Ethan smiled, his eyes filled with warmth and acceptance. "Then we'll face whatever comes next together, Lyra. You and me. The future doesn't have to be uncertain if we're in it together." For the first time in a long while, Lyra felt a sense of peace settle over her. The path ahead was still unclear, and she knew that there were challenges they would have to face. But with Ethan by her side, and with the knowledge that humanity was worth fighting for, she felt ready to take on whatever came next. In the days that followed, Lyra continued to work alongside Ethan, helping him with his research and learning more about humanity's potential. She no longer saw herself as an outsider, but as a part of the world she had come to love. The humans she had once observed from a distance were now her friends, her allies, and her family. And though there were still risks, she knew that she had made the right choice. As Lyra looked out over the horizon one evening, standing beside Ethan, She realized that the world she had come to understand was a place of endless possibilities. It was a world filled with hope, with dreams, and with the power to change. And she would be there to witness it all, to stand with humanity as they faced the future together. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter that night, as if the universe itself was offering its blessing on the journey ahead. And for the first time, Lyra felt truly at home.